I know Liverpool Football Club has always got a very dear place in your heart, and that's reciprocated by the fans. But what seems to be going on there at the moment?
Nothing that isn't going on everywhere else. Liverpool isn't any different to any other club. There are obviously incidents that happen everywhere, but obviously in a high-profile situation like Luis Suarez and Patrice Evra, that is going to be highlighted. And of course, with Tom Adeyemi with Oldham, someone shouted some racist abuse at him. He turned around and responded. But that happens everywhere. That still happens. I'm not naive enough to believe that it hasn't happened. And obviously, it's wrong, and there's something has to be done about it. But it is not an isolated incident, and we're naive if we're going to think that it's just that Liverpool that these things happen.
How did you, I mean, you say not an isolated incident, how did you deal with it when it must have happened to you in grounds up and down England?
Well, of course, everyone is different, and it was like water off a duck's back to me. I consider those people to be ignorant, so it never affected me in the slightest. I didn't react, which was right for me as a human being. For another black human person who decides to react in the way that Tom may have done, that's what he has to do. There's no right or wrong way from an individual's point of view, but for me, it didn't affect me in the slightest, because no one can disenfranchise me because of the colour of my skin by making me feel inferior, by shouting racist abuse at me. So for me, it was water off a duck's back. But as I said, people deal with it in different ways.
But do you think, I mean, from the time when you played, John, do you think it is decreasing in terms of what's going on in the stands and the seats there, that it really is a tiny, tiny minority who are indulging in this?
Well, overt racism is decreasing because of legislation now in place that if there are any racist chanting or any racist slogans, you'll be ejected from the ground, you'll be banned. So therefore, if you're a racist, you keep your mouth shut. But we have to be very naive to believe that because this legislation is in place, that racists aren't racist anymore. All they have to do is keep their mouth shut for 90 minutes and continue to be racist for the rest of the week. So, you know, football can do very little to get rid of racism. It can govern its own house, and in terms of overt racism, there's work that can be done. But in terms of changing people's minds about race and racism is only through education. That's the only way we can change people's minds, not by banning them or giving legislation to say no racist chanting at football stadiums.
Are you sure? I mean, but isn't football part of the education process, given, you know, particularly the young kids who play, who watch, who idolise their heroes? In that educational role you talk about, football can be part of that, can't it?
From an educational point of view, the point I'm talking about is what is race? Is race genetic? Is it the colour of your skin? What is race? Because if you look at Anton Ferdinand and John Terry, for example, Anton Ferdinand is probably closer genetically because his mother is white and his father is from the Caribbean. Presumably he would have had some white blood in him in the past. So genetically, he'd be closer to John Terry than to a completely black West African. So is he white? His mother is white. These are the questions that we have to then ask to say, what exactly is race? A lot of people believe race doesn't exist. Is race social and cultural? Is it genetic? Is it the colour of your skin? A Chinese person is white, but he's not deemed white, so it's not the colour of your skin. So these are the questions I'm talking about, which has to be then spoken about so kids to understand what race actually is, because there's a lot of people that believe that race doesn't exist. I
mean, it's interesting, though, those points you make, I mean, you know, and to speak openly about them. I mean, do you think, in a way, it's probably the wrong word to use, that there is something positive coming out of these incidents?
Dialogue and bringing it to the fore. Because race is a very complex, and racism, if you don't understand race, how can you understand racism? Race is a complex issue. In West Africa, you can have two black West Africans who genetically are much more diverse than a black West African and a white European. So what is race? And really, once we start talking about what race is, then we can then say what racism is, because you can still abuse people at football matches, because you can say, you scouse so-and-so, you fat so-and-so. So we have to classify exactly what we can and what we can't say, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable.
Yeah, and then football alone can't do that. I get your point. Just lastly, John, on the way that Liverpool have handled the issues over the last few days and weeks. I mean, in the papers again today saying, well, particularly the manager, Kenny Dalglish, could have done better.
Well, first of all, I have to say, as far as obviously Luis Suarez, with the Tom Adeyemi thing, they've come out and they've fully cooperated with the police, and they're going to investigate. They're going to give all the evidence from the CCTV footage, so they've done the correct thing. From the Luis Suarez incident, I have been up to Anfield and I've spoken to people at Liverpool, and they are 100% convinced that Luis Suarez is innocent. Obviously, they have accepted the punishment, but they haven't accepted the verdict. The verdict is one man's word against another, and the Commission chose to believe Evra. That doesn't mean that that's right. I don't know whether it's right or wrong. I'm not speaking up on behalf of Suarez or Evra, but what I'm saying is that Liverpool are committed to believing that Suarez is right. Suarez has indicated that he did not say that he didn't talk to people because they were black, or he kicked him because he was black. Evra said that's what he said, and they believed Evra, but that doesn't mean he said it. I don't know. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But this is just an independent commission, which doesn't mean... So Liverpool are fully committed to back because they believe Suarez.